Hello, my gorgeous dancer, and welcome to another episode of More Than Dance. I'm so excited because today we are going to talk about performing. It's pretty exciting because this Friday, the KDF Studio Performance Team is going to debut our very new choreography that we've been working on since the end of March. And I thought it would be so fitting to talk about performing and some of the things that I like to do to prepare for a performance. So, one of those things is to make sure that you have everything packed and lined up for the day of your performance. So, one of these days, maybe we can do a bag walkthrough and I can show you what I put in my bag. But for the case of this podcast, I want to talk about having some things on hand that are helpful. So, number one, it's got to be snacks because we know that things are always moving and we exert more energy the week of performance. So it's really important to make sure that we're properly nourished and well fed. One of these performances that I did in my life, I can't remember which one it was. One of my friends is a dancer and he was taking me to the performance and he was like, "Oh, you got to get your Snickers." And I was like, "What? I don't eat Snickers." And he was like, "No, but you need it you need to have it for backstage." I was like, "Why?" So I actually never liked Snicker bars until this moment because I actually I don't really like them, but I love the concept behind them. So we all know chocolate is everything. It has like that quick sugar that we need for energy. And then we've got the peanut butter, which has the fat, which has that like lasting effect. And then in the peanut butter somewhere, there is protein. So it's like a really kind of a funny, easy snack to have. Maybe hopefully double check to make sure no one has peanut allergies. Like that's what I would do. But if you're safe and square with that, then this is a great funny snack to have like backstage just because it has those three elements. Now, obviously, this has developed into some other favorite snacks to have in your bag to make sure that you are feeling, because you want to have high energy. We're about to release high energy, so we want to make sure that we are delivering with the highest of quality and the highest of energy. So actually, one of our performing members, she makes tortellini, and it's actually really funny because we've grown to really love this backstage. It has the fullness, the carbs, it has the fat, and you can mix it with chicken, so it has the protein, and it just feels, to me, it just feels really good. And actually, now that I'm talking about this, I think it's important for me to tell you, like, this isn't just something that you want to do before performance. You always want to make sure that you're well nourished before a dance class. So typically before one of my dance classes, and this is, dependent on the person, but I like to have my 3 food groups, protein, carbs, and fats always, because it's so important to be able to have lasting energy. Raise your hand if you've ever fainted in a dance class before. So I've definitely fainted maybe like 1 to 3 times, and no, definitely more than once. So I think 3 times I've fainted in class. And now I just make it a really important point to make sure that I'm eating properly throughout the week and also for the class that I'm teaching. And so for performance, because the whole day can kind of feel like a performance, because you get up, you pack your bag, you go to the place where you are, which is probably a different place. So there's directions involved. You get there, you find your spot, you're settling in, maybe you're teaching that day for the event. There's tech rehearsal that day, potentially. There's a lot of different elements that are happening that are like really important to consider when you're packing your bag. So typically I'll have a few different snacks, then I'll have like an actual meal. And I want to make sure that I'm like feeding myself every 3 hours to make sure that like I'm not getting over hungry, because don't forget that your brain works better when it's well fed. So if you're going to go for a long drive, what's the first thing that you do with your car? Usually we'll go and we'll fill up the tank and then we'll go on our merry way. I find it very rare that I would ever go for like a long drive and like start my drive and then like just depend on finding a rest stop and then fill up my gas tank. Obviously, like I do that when I get empty, but like why not just start your car drive with your fuel already filled up? I just feel like that's just way more prepared and just getting in the mindset of what you're about to do. Your car's like, oh, all filled up, ready to go. So the same with us when we're preparing for our performance. We want to make sure that we're all filled up and ready to go. So another thing that I like to do is to make sure I have my backups in place. Now, the DJ and me, because if you know me, you know that I'm a wedding DJ and I love to make sure that everything is prepared in advance and ready to go. And I am planned for the worst thing that could happen because that's just what a good DJ does. So the same can be true about a performance. So are you prepared? Do you have a backup pair of tights? What if they rip? Hopefully you have a backup. What happens if your costume rips? Do you have safety pins? Hopefully you have those. What happens if your hair falls out? Do you have a backup hair extension? Do you? I don't know. What happens if you have just like a bunch of wispies and your hair falls out and you have to redo your hair? A brush, gel, extra brush. So I'm packing myself with the essentials and then some. There's certain things that you just always want to have two of, and then there's certain things that are just like, okay, we'll just figure it out. Because there is something about the camaraderie in a group to know that all right, well, someone's gonna have this, and someone's gonna have this, and someone's gonna have this, and then you can kind of all unifyingly have your backups together. So not all of you have your backups, but it's really nice to be able to depend on that to happen. I've ripped a pair of tights before, even the non-rippable tights, they've ripped before. Making sure to have our stuff for our menstruation. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gotten my period on a performance day. And it makes sense, right? Because our body is going through stress and we're getting ready and we're working really hard and our body's like, oh, okay, da, 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 da. And then once performance comes, it's relaxing and it's okay, they're ready. Let me just flow. And that's exactly what happens. So it's important to have those essential needs. And then along with that, just making sure that you're taking care of medications. So if you know that your body is going to be sore because you're working extra hard with drills, then make sure you have your extra Tylenol or Advil. We know how to pack a bag, but you might not know that some of the best professionals out there are packing their bag in this way. And it's to have this dependence on yourself to always be able to nurture what you need. I find especially we're not 12 anymore. So the necessities are a little bit different than they were back then. So we are performing and we're thriving as we age. And one of the things that I like to make sure of is that my body is accounted for. So as you know, if you know me, I'm always taking care of my good knee and my great knee. And I'm making sure that I maybe prep with some Advil before the show, just in case. I haven't decided if I'm going to do it because I'm just going to kind of feel it on Thursday. Our performance is Friday, and today that we're filming this is Tuesday. So I'm going to make sure that I figure out what I need based off of my body. I might ice certain parts of my body. I might heat certain parts of my body, but there's a lot of things that go into the prep for that. Another thing that I want to make sure that I have with me is my shoes. So this is a funny thing that actually happens every time. So when you wear fishnets, okay, or you wear tights, you should always make sure that you remember to have a slip-on shoe versus a flip-flop. And this is the one thing that I always forget because I'll be like, oh my God, oh no, I only have my flip-flops. And trying to put the tights through the thong of the flip-flop is just not doable. So have something that slips on so you can easily get in and out, a backup change of clothes, an extra change of clothes, and then also all of the water. We need all of the water. You gotta have your water. I like to have one water bottle that's full with ice and then extra water bottles to make sure that I can refill in case there's no water there, just God forbid. But that's me in life no matter what. I always feel I need my water bottle with me at all times. Otherwise I don't feel right. Some other things that we want to make sure that we do before our performance is, this is an obvious one, but it's a dress rehearsal. Something about the dress rehearsal that is meaningful to me. So for those of you who know us, we wear these long ponytails, and your girl uses hair for that. So we put that in a ponytail, and you'd be surprised if you've never done this before, how drastically different the dance feels when you put a ponytail in. So making sure that I get a number of runs in with my actual ponytail in is very important, especially because we are heels dancers. And if you've ever danced heels, then you know we're off balance a little bit when we're flicking our extra hair back. So to know and make sure that we're igniting the right muscles to counteract for the extra added weight. It would be the same as if we were like, my friend is pregnant right now and she dances as well. And so like her center of gravity is very much different than it normally is because of there's more weight in one direction. So the same with us with our ponytails. When we're flipping it this way, it's going to have more velocity and more weight when we pull this way. So our muscles have to just like intrinsically know when to push us back and when to pull us back and the timing of all of it. So the way to do that really easily is just to run it a bunch of times with your hair in. So that's one thing. And then obviously the actual costume. So the costume that we have usually, I mean, I would find it very rare that our costume wouldn't have rhinestones, and they fall off sometimes. And we stone our own costumes. So it's really nice to see which ones are the ones falling off. And if we can either A, replace them, and two, if they keep falling off in that same spot, like why, or just get a better glue. We've tried different glues and like, you know, sometimes it just falls off and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just the way that you hit it in one of the parts of the choreography, but it is a good idea to double check with your costume. The other thing is we do have tights, and when we're wearing our costume, some of the moves, we want to make sure that like nothing gets exposed. So we don't want Ruby or Luby popping out. We don't want Raby or Laby popping out. Yes, I named them. So the thing about that is you're doing the dance full out, and you're doing it in your normal clothes, and it's going to feel different when you're in your costume. And when you're in your costume, you might find that you could be shrinking your movement just because you feel like you want to be gentle in your costume. But the best thing to do is go full out, go hardcore. If you end up wrecking your costume in any way, you'll hopefully have time to fix it with your seamstress before and ahead of time. So I know that's like what we do before any given show. I like to do 25 full outs. And what that means is we are doing the routine 5 times in a row for 5 days. And I call this like the endurance training. The endurance training, it should feel easy to do 5 in a row. It shouldn't feel a challenge. And that's when I feel like I know that, because the worst feeling, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the worst feeling is doing a dance that you love and performing it on stage and like feeling really tired. Like I hate that feeling. And I can remember this moment when I was in high school, but I'm trying to remember like how old I was in high school or what grade I was in. But my guess is I think it was sophomore year. And I remember like in competition facing the back and just being like, and just like catching my breath and just feeling like, oh my gosh, okay, turn around, smile. And right now, because of the way that we do our training, I don't feel like I'm exhausted. And actually, it's funny because there's a hill that we climb pretty frequently in my neighborhood. And when I'm not endurance trained, like I am right now, this specific week, when I climb that up, I'm like, oh, okay. Or even like certain staircases that like keep going, I'll be like, okay, I feel it, because it's different muscles than dancers use. But even this hill, I did it yesterday and I was climbing up and I was like, yeah, this is nothing for me today. It felt literally like nothing because I've been working on the endurance training for this specific dance for so long. So another thing that's really important when you're doing your endurance training is to think about the way that your face is, because like when you're doing your face is adding more energy. So if you're letting your body go hardcore, but your face is still like this, that doesn't count as a full out. A full out includes the face, and it actually includes like, and this is what I like to do, I like to play pretend and see if I can like pretend different faces in the audience and how I would interact with them. And that's like helpful for me. As amazing as the audience is, it can get distracting when you start like making too much eye contact with them. So this leads me to my next idea for you, is to see if you can get an audience in front of you to practice with engagement. There's nothing I love better than being in the audience and letting the dancer just interact with me. It feels so much more fun to enjoy, and it feels personal, and you really feel like you're like, oh, she looked at me. Oh my gosh. Versus like watching someone do actual good dance movement, but they're so boring. Their face is so drawn, and it's like it's like, wow, you're miserable. You probably shouldn't do that anymore. Have you ever experienced that? I remember, oh my gosh, being on this boat one time and they had these like go-go dancers. And I remember looking at this girl and she was literally like, and her face was just drawn like our RBF, resting bitch face. And me being like, wow, why are you even bothering? Like, if you're having a bad day, you got to put your face on. Otherwise, no one wants to look at you. So when you're doing your full outs, make sure that you're practicing with your face and you're practicing with your engagement. Because remember, as a dancer, we are igniting joy to our audience. We are bringing the light to them. So that's why you want to make sure that you're already ready to give them eye contact and give them smiles and smirks. And it's really exciting we all know it. We've been in the audience before when it's been really good. So the next thing to talk about is the immediate backstage kind of setup. So this is where we're going to be talking briefly about your mindset, your intention, and like what to do with your body. This is more of like the actual performance day versus the performance week. So when you're backstage, something that I love to do, well, like we all know we got to be warm. So doing what you want to do to be warm, but not overdoing it. Just like with running the routine, like you might want to run the routine and run it through, but at some point you just have to trust yourself and know that everything that you've done up until this moment is actually already prepped. You already did it. If you're backstage and you're rehearsing, you probably didn't spend enough time rehearsing. The other thing too is oftentimes I see people isolating themselves backstage, and it's just such a great time to be conversing and, like talking to people, like making connections, trusting that like you have what you need. It's already in your body and it's already in your brain and you're already ready to go. You also might not want to watch the performances as, focus on you and focus on yours and think about the things that like you're about to deliver and do. We don't want to set ourselves up for a comparison. We also, and that's another reason why we don't want to isolate, is because we don't want to get ourselves spiraling and thinking like, oh gosh, do I know this? Do I know this part? And the truth is, you might mess up on stage and you've hopefully prepared for that. And then obviously the most important thing to do when you're performing is have fun and remember why you're doing this. The reason why we perform is obviously because it's so fun. We get to deliver energy, we get to share our talent, and we get to be us on stage in a world where if you've ever been on stage, you know that feeling. You cannot duplicate that feeling. You cannot perform for someone on like, I'm thinking of the times where like maybe I've performed for people like in the living room or whatever. It's not the same. Like having an audience of people you don't know just there to enjoy what you have to bring, nothing can compare. So enjoy the time that you're up there, smile and do things full out. And remember that that feeling is for you. And it's such an equal exchange because the people in the audience are just as excited to see you do what you do as you are excited to show them what you've been doing. And just ride that high and enjoy. And I look forward to seeing you on the dance floor. And I hope that these performance tips have helped you to prepare for a very successful performance and that you know exactly how to pack your bag and exactly how to bring in your intention backstage so that you're not overwhelmed, not spiraling, and also very open to receiving connections from other performers and not getting in your head because no one wants to get in your head when you're about to perform. You just want to live and breathe and get excited and not nervous when you're ready to perform. So enjoy the experience to the full extent, and I will see you next time.